Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Chatting with the Lightkeeper. I'm Edward, and well, you ever kind of just go down one of those unique rabbit holes and you just start seeing things and going, wow, that's odd. And you kind of keep digging deeper and deeper, and suddenly you find yourself fully, completely down the rabbit hole, and you're at that point unsure how you even got started going down the rabbit hole. Well, that's what happened to me. And so that leads to this week's podcast. But before I go down the rabbit hole of insane, crazy WTF sex laws in the United States, um, I am recording this on Anal Sex Day. So I want to wish everyone a happy holiday. And I hope that if that is your thing, that you are celebrating and enjoying the holiday to its fullest, unless you live in certain states. Um, if you live in, oh, criminy, I know I live in one of the states. Um, I know it's Michigan. Yep, okay. It's Alabama, Florida, Idaho, Kansas, Louisiana, as I said before, Michigan, Mississippi, North Carolina, Oklahoma, South Carolina, Texas, and Utah. Sorry you can't celebrate today. So, anyways, I started kind of going down the rabbit hole of legality and DS and BDSM and how it all plays with the legal system. And I apologize to those who listen in other countries, but this one is kind of specific to the United States because it's where I live. So it was the most interesting to me to start down the rabbit hole, and so that's where I stayed. But let's start with a little fun before we get to the more serious side of this. Um, so we're gonna start by picking on Utah. Now, I've only been to Utah to ski, so I really don't have much experience with the state other than landing in Salt Lake City, renting a car, and driving up to one of the Cottonwood Canyons. So, Utah, it is legal for first cousins to get married there. Yeah, that's kind of a stunner. But now, if you are younger than 55 and want to marry your first cousin, you have to go to the state and say that you will not have children. Cross our hearts, hope to die, we will not have children. But now, once you hit age 65, then you can just marry your first cousin without having to cross your heart and hope to die. So that's kind of a unique one for Utah. And now we head to the big city of, I may mispronounce this, so apologizing to anyone who's overly familiar with the state of Utah. But in Tremonton, Utah, women are not allowed to get frisky in the back of an ambulance. Now, apparently, men can get frisky in the back of an ambulance there, but if you are a female, you can't do anything frisky in the back of the ambulance, or you could get a sexual misdemeanor. Interesting, and it's kind of funny that men can do it. So, if a man and a woman were getting frisky in the back of an ambulance in this small town in Utah, um, the woman goes to jail and the man gets what, a pat on the back from Deputy Barney Fife. I guess that's how it works there. Also, this is fascinating and yet sick. In Utah, men, I guess we can now use the old joke here. Utah, where men are men and the sheep know it, because in Utah, men can have sex with animals. Let that sink in for a second. Yep, if you're a man, you can go out and get it on with a sheep or whatever animal you would like, unless you're doing it for profit. Then it becomes illegal. So if you're, say, doing a fans only with black sheep, then yeah, that's illegal because you're getting paid for your fun, and yeah. So, Utah, marry your cousin, bang the sheep, just women, you can't get frisky in an ambulance. All right, doesn't that sound like fun? So let's kind of fly off to the east coast of the United States to another big metropolis called Haddon Township, New Jersey, where it's illegal to flirt. Doesn't matter your gender. No flirting. It's illegal. You flirt, you go to jail. So I can't imagine that this township has much of a bar scene, or if it does, maybe it's a bunch of grumpy old men crying into their beer with, no flirting allowed. So that was fascinating. And how do you define flirting? I mean, what really constitutes flirting? I would love to see that one in a court case somewhere. How do you define flirting versus being nice? I mean, just speaking for me personally, I always struggle when somebody is flirting with me. I just think somebody is being nice to me. I have zero clue I am being flirted with unless, like, that person pulls out a hammer, hits me upside the head with it, and says, "Hey, dumbass, I'm flirting with you." Really, that's what it takes for me to catch on to that. So maybe I'd be a good fit to live in that little township in New Jersey. Okay, now we're going to move on to Alabama. And in the big town of Anniston, Alabama, if you are a female and you lose a game of pool and you have put a wager on this game of pool, you cannot settle your tab with sex. Once again, this is just for women. So, men, you lose the game of pool, you can settle your tab with sex. But, you know, ladies, you cannot. I mean, who thinks of that? I mean, why does that have to be a law? Like, apparently they had a bunch of women losing at pool and using sex to pay their bills. I don't know. Anyways, in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, it's illegal to have sex in a with a truck driver in a toll booth. Now, I'm not sure how the truck driver and the person that they're having sex with got from the truck to the toll booth, but yeah, that's against the law. In Cottonwood, Arizona, couples having sex in a vehicle with flat tires will be fined. Now, the fine is doubled if the police catch you having sex in the back seat. So the fine is half as much if you're just doing it in the front seat, but if you have four flat tires and you're having sex in the back seat, then they double the fine. Now, if you have three tires that are flat and one still has air, I guess you can have sex in your car in Cottonwood, Arizona. Just you can't have sex there with four flat tires. Once again, who decides and thinks, oh yeah, we need to have that law? So if you live in Newcastle, Wyoming, couples are banned from having sex while standing. Couples and there you have to be standing while you're having sex inside any store's walk-in meat freezer. So apparently you can have sex while standing in the store in the produce aisle. You just can't have sex while you're standing in the store's walk-in freezer, which, I mean, it sounds like it sounds like it would be horribly cold and frigid. And yes, I'm a skier. So yes, things have transpired in my life outdoors in winter, but I can't imagine going and choosing to enjoy life, if you will, in a walk-in freezer when much warmer choices are readily available. Now, if you live in Oblong, Illinois, not only is there you must have something kind of crazy wrong with you to live in a place called Oblong. It makes me think of the James Bond villain Odd Job. But anyways, if you live in Oblong, Illinois, it is against the law to have sex while hunting or fishing on your wedding day. So if you get married and go hunting and you're having sex while hunting or having sex while fishing and it is your wedding day, not anniversary, but the day of your wedding, yeah, you are going to jail in Oblong, Illinois. Now, I'm not sure how they enforce that, but or I'd really love, and unfortunately, these are what you can't find, is the story behind the law, because they have to be just downright crazy stories. So, if you live in Arizona, Florida, Idaho, Indiana, Massachusetts, Mississippi, Nebraska, Nevada, New York, Ohio, Oklahoma, Oregon, South Dakota, Tennessee, Utah, Vermont, Wisconsin, and Washington, the District of Columbia, you, if you are a male, you cannot have any erection visible under your clothing in public. Now, here's my question to those legislators in those states and that district. What about teen tween boys? Um, and ladies, if you don't know this, but I'm sure many of you do, when boys hit that certain age and puberty starts, there's like this time when erections are like uncontrollable. They happen for no apparent reason and in random places. So, that's why sometimes teen boys in like middle school will be like, no, I don't want to go up to the board to solve that math problem, teacher, because I'm having a little problem of my own here in this, sitting here. So, I mean, what happens to, you know, that poor teenager who has nature happen that happens to pretty much all men when they're at that age? What happens to them? I mean, are we locking up teens and tweens who are, you know, going through that joyful coming of age process when they get their erection in public? So that's an odd one, but it's quite a few states. Now, if you live in Bozeman, Utah, you cannot have any sexual activity on your front yard or front lawn of your house. It has to be your house, your front yard after sundown. Um, okay, so you can't get it on in your front yard after sundown. Um, but the caveat to this is it's only illegal if you're nude. So if you're, say, both wearing a shirt or maybe socks, or maybe you're both wearing underwear and you just kind of move the underwear out of the way to get to the goodies, then it's legal. Then you can, you know, get it on in your front yard after sundown. And the other question I have is what happens if it's new? I mean, can you just do it in your front yard and fully naked at noon because the sun is up? Questions for Bozeman, Montana. In Alexandria, Minnesota, a man is not allowed to have sex with his wife immediately after eating garlic, onions, or sardines. What about his girlfriend? Can he have sex with his girlfriend, but not his wife then? What about an informal encounter, a one night stand? Can you do that after having garlic, onions, and sardines? Anyway, we'll keep it tuned to Minnesota. Um, boy, can't remember the University of Minnesota's schema. I think that's their slogan. Probably butchered that, so I apologize for that. But anyway, in the state of Minnesota, good news, ladies, this law doesn't apply to you. It only applies to those with penises. And once again, I'd hate to know the story behind this, but it's illegal for men to have sexual intercourse with live fish. Your fish is dead. You can go ahead and get it on with that dead fish. And ladies, apparently you can have as much fun as you want with the fishes. So, being a fan of the Godfather movies, maybe they mean when they say somebody's swimming with the fishes in Minnesota, it means something completely different than what it meant in New York City with families in the mob. Apparently, so. Anyways, short hop away from Minnesota is the big towner Connorsville, Wisconsin. Now, I am surprised that the National Rifle Association hasn't raised holy hell about this, because in Connorsville, you cannot shoot your gun off while your female partner is having an orgasm. So while she is screaming out in pleasure, you can't pull out your six-shooter and start firing it off to celebrate. Which leads me to believe why do we need to have a law on that one? All right. So let's head down to the penis state, which is Florida, by the way, where it is illegal. And just think, this guy wants to be president of the United States. Think about this, folks. In Florida, it is illegal for single, divorced, or widowed women to parachute on Sunday afternoons. So, Governor DeSantis, why is that? I mean, I know you're mad at Mickey Mouse for for standing up and saying they didn't like one of your laws, but what was it that caused you to freak out about single, divorced, or widowed women parachuting on Sunday afternoons? If anything, you would think it would be Sunday morning because they would be parachuting rather than in church. But I don't. And by the way, it is actually written as afternoon. So what constitutes afternoons? Is that 12:01 p.m. through 3:01 p.m.? I mean, what actually is an afternoon? So, and yeah. So, anyways, just think about that one. So we'll kind of head more to the heartland here and head off to Ames, Iowa, which is the home of Iowa State University. And yeah, here's a good one. After having sex and you're lying in bed, if you're a man, you are not allowed to have more than 3 sips of beer in the post-coitus glow period. Now, apparently, if you had sex with a female partner, they could shotgun a beer if they wanted to. And the other thing is, since it's actually beer, does that mean you could have liquor in bed? I mean, could you pour out some bourbon and chug a log on the bourbon because having the beer would be illegal? I don't know, but yeah, that's a fun one. In another college town, home of Ohio University. This would be Ohio University, not the Ohio State, but in Oxford, Ohio. Ladies, I am so sorry to tell you this, but you cannot strip your clothing off while standing in front of a man's picture. It's any man's picture, whether it's a, you know, picture of, I don't know, Jesus, for example. It would be illegal to take your clothing off in front of Jesus. And here's another question. Let's say you are a married couple and you have a picture of your loving husband in your bedroom, and you go in the bedroom to change your clothes, say before bed, and you take your clothes off in your bedroom with this picture of your loving husband. You're breaking the law, breaking the law. So, yeah, there's a fun one. What caused that? I mean, was there some picture in downtown Oxford that just miraculously caused women to start peeling their clothes off that they had to pass this law? I guess we will never know. Now let's move on to a little fun with sex toys. First of all, if you live in Alabama, Georgia, Mississippi, or Virginia, you cannot sell toys legally. You may own them, but you can't sell them. So I guess the adult toy business is probably not too big in those 4 states. Also, in some counties in Texas, it is illegal to actually own sex toys in the state of Texas. And since we're in Texas, they have this neat law, and it's called the Obscene Device Law. Anybody want to guess what a obscene device is? Well, it's a dildo. They're obscene in Texas. Whoa. You cannot own more than 6. Doesn't matter, ladies. No more than 6 dildos in Texas. You can own all the guns you want, but only 6 dildos, which is really odd. And yeah, think about that. 6. I mean, who comes up with that? Okay, 6 dildos. That's the limit. We can't let our women have any more than 6. Where do they come up with this? But they did. Now, since most of you listening to this are a bit kinky, we all know that handcuffs are kind of a fun toy that gets used a lot, sometimes in kinky role play. But in New York, California, New Jersey, and Massachusetts, they are considered an offensive weapon. That's right, they're an offensive weapon and can only be used by law enforcement. And by law enforcement, they also mean rent-a-cops, security guards can have handcuffs. So I have a business proposition. Perhaps we could start the Paul Blart School of Bondage in New York, California, New Jersey, and Massachusetts. And not only when you graduate will you be a licensed security guard, but you can then use your handcuffs for all your kinky desires. Um, anyways, still on the handcuffs thing, but we're heading back to the penis state where this one's great. You can own the handcuffs in Florida. You just can't own the keys. So you can cuff and stuff your partner. You just, when you're done, you got to leave them where you've got them cuffed because you can't own the key to uncuff your stuffed partner. Uh, so in Florida, North Carolina, and Mississippi, if any man and woman who are not married to each other shall, and here's some good legality here, lewdly and lasciviously associate in bed and cohabitate together, they will be guilty of a misdemeanor. So if you live in Florida, North Carolina, or Mississippi, and you live with your partner and you are not married, you're breaking the law, breaking the law. Um, so yeah, go figure that's still on the books. And as I said before, this is anal sex day. Now you can celebrate it anywhere you want, except for Alabama, Florida, Ohio, Kansas, Louisiana, Michigan, Mississippi, North Carolina, Oklahoma, South Carolina, Texas, and Utah. Other than that, go out and get you some. Speaking of Michigan, it's my home state. It is illegal to seduce and debauch an unmarried woman in Michigan. Now, I'm not sure what debauch means. I would assume that means that you cannot have sex with an unmarried woman in Michigan, which means I'm, you know, probably going to go to jail. Um, if anybody in law enforcement in Michigan listens to my podcast, because anyways, so yeah, that's a fun one. In Idaho, Illinois, Massachusetts, Mississippi, South Carolina, and Utah, all forms of premarital sex are illegal. So my quick thought is, so you get arrested in Utah for having premarital sex. Now, does the arrest and the prosecution, does it all hold up if you say you never intended to get married? Because it's premarital. If you don't plan on marrying the partner and they don't plan on marrying you, is it really premarital sex? Just a thought. And then once again in Utah, you can't have, you know, premarital sex, but that sheep can be looking pretty good to you, I guess. Now, poly relationships obviously are not like you can't have two husbands or two wives or any combination thereof in the United States, at least not yet. But Mississippi, they take it a little bit farther. You cannot teach other people the doctrines, principles, or tenets, or any of them about being poly. So if you're poly and you live in Mississippi, or let's say you're just passing through Mississippi on a road trip and you're talking to somebody and you say, oh, that's my husband and that's my boyfriend, you're breaking the law because you are talking about being poly. And heaven forbid if they ask a question like, well, how does that work? Oh, no, you're teaching the doctrines and principles of this. Oh, you're going to jail. Married and cheating, that's okay as long as you don't live in Arizona, because that's against the law in Arizona. So if you live in Arizona, don't marry and cheat, or don't get married and cheat, because you'll end up in the hokey pokey where you might not turn yourself around. So I know that was kind of fun to go through all of the zaniness, and there's more out there. Trust me, this is just like the tip of the penis-shaped iceberg of crazy sex laws in the United States. But yeah, they're all out there. But what led me down this rabbit hole was the lifestyle and the legalities of it. And so how do we protect ourselves, those of us involved in the lifestyle? from ending up on the wrong side of the law and potentially running in and meeting our very own local Barney Fife. Which, if you don't know who Barney is, just Google the Andy Griffith Show, and you'll get to know Barney, Andy, and well, whatever Jim Neighbors is, Goober, Gober, something like that. Anyway, we protect ourselves by having kind of set methods for consensual practices. Now, if you ever want to be mischievous and start a row at a gathering of Kingsters, start talking about the different methods of practices and why people practice this way and watch them just like get enraged with somebody who doesn't practice. If they practice rack and somebody practices SSC, they get just, oh, it's really crazy how like attached people are to these methods. So let's real quickly kind of talk about them. I know it's something I've talked about before, but for grins, it's never a bad thing to talk about consent and consent practices. So the first, and probably I would dare say the most popular in the lifestyle, and if you're newer, it's probably the way that you were introduced to it, and it's called safe, sane, and consensual. Comes out of a Fourth of July fireworks celebration of all things is the impetus behind it. Um, but yeah, it just practice things safely, do things sanely, and of course, we do things consensually. Now, you might have some questions, and they're very valid questions. And these questions started coming as people started looking and saying, maybe I don't want to, I want to be safe. And obviously, I don't want to do anything crazy and obviously consensual, but the whole, SC, Safe, Sane, Consensual. I can't do the acronym at this point. Too much coffee today. Um, Raises some issues. I mean, first, what is safe? I mean, is there like the International BDSM convention that meets in some ritzy European spa town, but in a dank dark basement that decides, you know, across the board what is safe practices in BDSM? No, there isn't. So who decides what's safe? It's kind of, if you think about it, a little questionable. When the actual answer is, whoever you are playing with, you both have to have a discussion about what is safe and what isn't safe for you. You may find that just saying that you both agree with safe, sane, and consensual and think you're all good, you may not be, because what is safe to one person is unsafe to another. So, yep, that's a discussion point you need to have. Also, now here comes sane. What what is considered sane? Once again, there's no, you know, ruling governing body that says this is considered sane practices and these aren't considered sane practices. Um, so yeah, it's something. And also, what if you have a mental health concern? A lot of people do, and we're being more and more open about mental health now. So what is sane, what is not sane, and who's going to say what's sane and what isn't sane? Do we bring Saddam Hussein back from the dead to judge sane? I no idea. But once again, it is a question and a discussion that you have to have with whomever you're going to play with. Now, consent, that's it should be a simple, it should be a no-brainer. And of course, consent means that in order to give consent, you can't be impaired from alcohol, drugs, perhaps the mental state that you're in, any type of impairment that would invalidate your consent. You have to be I guess, in charge of all your faculties. But and consent is consent. It's ruled by the it's ruled by an order of fries. So safe, sane, consensual came along, and then as I said, the people said had some questions and concerns, and then a lot of those people that had the questions and concerns, they formed what they call RAC, which is risk aware consensual kink, which basically means risk aware. You understand you understand the risk of what you're doing. In pretty much every activity that we engage in has some risk, whether it's giving or receiving a spanking or crossing the street. There's risk involved in every single thing we do. Brushing your teeth could be risky if you're not paying attention and jam the toothbrush someplace. So everything we do has risk. So the risk aware folks highlight the fact that everyone must be informed of and understand the risk and be aware of them. And of course, it's consensual. And of course, the kink kind of goes without saying that we're in the land of power exchange scenes, kinky fuckery. All of that is incorporated underneath that. And so you have, when you get the safe, sane, consensual people and somebody in the people that are rack proponents, it's if there's ever a discussion, my advice is no matter how you feel, don't say anything. Just sit back, pop some popcorn, and watch the sparks fly. Because for whatever reason, a lot of people in this lifestyle cannot have a rational discussion about this. And I do want to add as a caveat, since it's popping to mind, no matter how somebody practices the safety aspects of it, whether it's the safe, sane, consensual, whether it's the risk aware consensual kink, whether they're a prick or whether they practice the 4 C's. We'll get to being a prick and the 4 C's in just a minute. There isn't a right or wrong answer here. It's what works for you. And you can kind of modify it. You don't have to be a prick only. You could be a prick and take from over here at safe, sane, and consensual. So there's really no right answer as long as you are aware and practicing these methods for keeping things safer. So the new kid on the block is called Prick. And Prick is somewhere, in my opinion, between safe, sane, consensual and the rack folks. The big thing with Prick, and Prick stands for personal responsibility informed consensual kink. In personal responsibility, basically it's saying, hey, it's on you to understand the risk, the rewards of what you're going to do. It is not on your partner to sit down and explain this to you. If your partner wants to do something that you don't fully understand, yes, obviously talk to your partner about it, but it's your responsibility to fully understand it. And we live in a world where no one wants to take personal responsibility for anything anymore. I mean, just look at the headlines in the news. Oh, it wasn't my fault. It was because of this, or it was because of that. Nothing is anybody's fault anymore. So the personal responsibility part is huge with this. And informed means you have to educate yourself because it's your responsibility to educate yourself, not somebody else's. And of course, we have consensual because everything involves consent. So that's what being a prick is. And yes, here in the lifestyle, it can be good to be a prick. Okay, there's a fun thing to say. So now we're to the 4 C's, which are caring, communication, caring, communicative, consent, and caution. The 4 C's are something that I'm guessing many of you listening have probably never heard of, or many of you haven't heard of. And it's something that primarily is used amongst people who are in MS style relationships. And by MS, I mean master slave. Uh, Two terms that I would love to somehow change in the lifestyle, but it is what it is. So if somebody is in an MS relationship, this is where you're going to see the 4 C's. It starts with caring. And of course, you have to care about your partner. If you don't give a hoot about your partner, no, what are you doing? I mean, even if you're casually playing, you're a human. You should care about who you're going to play with because they're a human, and we should all care for each other. Basic thing, care for other humans. And then, of course, communication. which is, it's a fundamental thing. You have to be able to talk about anything and everything you want to do, don't want to do. You communicate, you know? And of course, there's consent. We can't do anything in the lifestyle without everybody involved giving their consent. And caution is understanding that everything we do has the risk of danger. And if somebody senses that there could be a danger, they need to act with caution. And so those are the different manners which I guess consent and the lifestyle safety, the safety principles, I guess, if you will, of the lifestyle are all there. And then, of course, every single one of them prioritizes consent. Everything prioritizes consent. And consent is something that you need to get, obviously. And you need to order this always with a side of fries. If you're not from the United States, fries are French fries, which I think, like in England, would be considered chips. So chips doesn't fit this fun acronym, so we are going with fries. First thing to remember about consent is it has to be freely given. You cannot coerce, you cannot bully, you cannot guilt trip, or even pressure. I really, really, really want to do this. Will you please, please? It's one of my fantasies. Please do this with me. That's not, you're pressuring. So that consent is no, you can't. That person is getting pressured. They should never ever consent to that. The R in fries is for reversible because at any point, at any time, anybody involved in a scene can say, nope, I'm done. I stopped. I changed my mind. I'm safe wording. Whatever it is, however they communicate it, everybody has the right at any time to revoke their consent. It's reversible. And of course, with consent, you have to be informed, which means the person saying, yes, I would do that, they understand what doing that actually means. Um, hey, it's anal sex day. It's not when you're listening to this, but it is as I'm recording it. So we'll talk about a little backdoor loving here. It's probably, I don't know, a year, 6 months ago that I had a dominant discussing some questions with me, and he explained that that he and his submissive were looking to try um, a little ATM. I'm not going to go into what that is. Let's just say they weren't going to go withdraw large amounts of cash from the cash machine. That's not the kind of ATM they were looking to explore. And I just simply asked. I said, as long do you and your submissive both understand the risk of this play? And the response was face palming because it was, well, can you tell me what the risks are? And I'm just like, oh. So you have to understand, you have to be informed of the risk to you and your partner or playmates, however that works, but you have to be informed to give consent, which means understanding not only the risk, but understanding the mechanics of how things are supposed to work. Um, Enthusiastic consent must be enthusiastically given. Um, the way I always look at it, if the answer isn't hell yes, it's a no. If they're not geeked and excited to get on board with the project, then it's a no. So if it's not an enthusiastic, yeah, let's do it, well, then no, And also consent is specific. And by specific, it means for example, let's say in the past you have done something with another person and it was fine because they consented in the past, but because they consented in the past, it doesn't mean they're consenting today. Or, for example, let's say a dominant asks the submissive they're going on a date with to wear a skirt with no panties out to dinner. Um, Submissive agrees to do that. But the consent is not for the dominant then to reach under the skirt, under the table, because they didn't ask for that. They would still need to ask for consent to find out if the request was honored or not. So that's the phrase of consent. And why consent is so important in the lifestyle is here are some things that may come as a surprise. Um, Spanking is a very popular BDSM activity. Did you know it's illegal in all the states of the United States? Everywhere in the United States, it is illegal to consensually spank another adult. But they consented, and I had fries, and we practiced prick, or we practiced safe, sane, and consensual, or we follow the 4 C's, and they consented. It's still illegal. And here's the legal reason behind it is, and this is the case with really any type of impact play. No one, this is the law speaking, not me, the law. No one can give consent to be assaulted. So, to a police officer or a prosecuting attorney, even though they've consented, you are assaulting them. The person giving the impact is assaulting the bottom in the scene, and therefore, since no one can legally give their consent to be assaulted, you're breaking the law. You are assaulting someone. Here's another one. Let's say you like to play with rope. You like to do rope bondage. Or you just, for the spice it up a little bit and you want to just tie your partner to the bed while you please them. Or let's just say they put a blindfold on them. Well, now we've gone from assault. We have now moved into a little bit more serious thing. It can be considered torture, or it can be considered kidnapping because you're technically holding somebody against their will, even though they've consented and are willing participants. Once again, the law does not say that even though you consented to this, your consent is not a defense. So it's very important to remember that legally consent is not a defense. Now, how do most things that go bump in the BDSM world end up in the legal system in the United States? And there are some common ways that this happens. First of all, and I don't mean to throw the submissives here under the bus, but it is typically where it comes from. A BDSM scene goes too far, and the submissive goes to the police. Now, the submissive very well could rightfully be going to the police because they may have safe word, they may have said no, they may have revoked their consent, and the dominant didn't stop. In that case, absolutely the right thing to do. But dominants, you also have to understand, let's say there's buyer's remorse, or better yet, let's say that submissive, even though you were abundantly clear you were looking to just have playtime, they felt that if they gave playtime that it would lead to a relationship. The relationship didn't come, so therefore they are now going to the law enforcement people to claim that you assaulted, you kidnapped, you tortured them. So that happens, and so it's so important to trust. Remember that big trust. Trust is so important in this lifestyle because what we're doing is, even though it's consensual, it can have repercussions. Another area where things happen to end up in the legal system is injury. Let's say it's accidental. You were spanking and your hand slipped and you whacked a kidney, and the next day the person you were spanking had blood in their urine, so they went to see the doctor. The thing to remember here is, in many, if not all places have this, but in many places, if you see a doctor and they suspect domestic abuse, they by law must report it. So if you're going to Dr. Valerie Vanilla and your bum is red and maybe bruised from the spanking that you got a few days ago, to Dr. Valerie Vanilla, they're seeing domestic abuse, and they are required by law to call law enforcement. So even though what you've done is consensual, the doctor is doing what they have to do by law because they see it as abuse. And in some places still, even if you say, no, I do not want to press charges against Danny Dominant for giving me the fiery bottom. There are places where the victim does not get a chance to opt out of pressing charges. They are pressed, the charges happen anyway, which I don't think is a bad thing for when it comes to incidents of domestic violence. It's something that if you're in the lifestyle, you need to be aware of. Um, I've even talked to a submissive who, without thinking, they forgot they had a doctor's appointment. I believe it was like on a Tuesday or a Wednesday, and over the weekend they did some serious impact play with their dominant, and when they went to the doctor, they were still bruising, and it was all consensual. But mind you, that tripped them and got them involved in the legal system. And by the way, in the United States, the legal system is pretty open, so names are not going to necessarily be redacted. And if you live in a small town papers love to tell seedy little sleazy stories. And yeah. So that would be a fun court little blurb that might pop up with your name in it if you're not careful. So it's very important to be considerate and consider these things. Well, this is very, very unlikely, these final things, but especially if you live in a conservative part of the country and let's say election time's rolling around and the local sheriff or prosecutor or some judges are up for reelection and they need to kind of get their conservative street cred going because they're not doing so well in the polls. It's happened, especially in states that are notoriously conservative in the United States, where when it gets to be around election time, places like a BDSM event gets raided by the police because the local police officers or judges or prosecutors need to thump their chest, and they're rooting out all the sick and twisted people in this area. They're going to get them all. So if you're in a very conservative part of the country, be careful what you do, especially when election time is rolling around. Another area, which is that it's not, it's a sad statement about people, really. Um, it's no different than our vanilla friends when sometimes there's a bad breakup. Our vanilla friends will say mean and nasty things about their ex, which may or may not be true or be partially true. And we all know how that goes. Somebody done somebody wrong, and they're upset about it, rightfully so. The problem is since some of the lifestyle activities are not legal, that somebody done me wrong thing ends up getting the police involved because they're believing it to be, once again, domestic violence or domestic abuse of some sort. And this is another area, and it's very important because people so often share erotic content. We'll say it that. Maybe pictures, videos, um, of things that they enjoyed with a partner or with a playmate. They're very comfortable being an exhibitionist and sharing these things, oftentimes online. Sometimes these can end up in the wrong hands. So it's very important to be aware of what you are sharing digitally. And even if you share it on a site like FetLife where you're sharing intimate pictures, um, those pictures can still be zapped off of FetLife and turn up in places you don't want them to turn up. So be very careful with how and what you share digitally, because if you don't want it out there, don't put it out there. It's that simple. So that is why consent in this lifestyle is so super important, because there's the unintended, and nobody intends to break the law. I mean, I don't think anybody sets out going into DS and enjoying it, liking it, and finding out that something that you enjoy or like is against the law. But it does happen. And, you know, those of us who have experienced the lifestyle before have probably technically broken laws to do things that consensually were enjoyable. So it's very important to have that, to take that time to understand not only the importance of consent and how it works, to be able to trust who you're going to play with and trust that where you're going to engage in your fun is a safe and protected environment. While the odds of ever running running amok with the law is very very slim, just like the odds of catching somebody in Minnesota um, doing the nasty with a live fish is, you know, probably something you're not going to find on a family canoe trip in Minnesota. But we need to be aware and conscious of the legality of what we enjoy and what we engage in. So make sure that no matter how you get your kink on, you do it consensually, safely. You're aware and informed of the risk. You take responsibility for all of that, and really prioritize consent and trust, trust, really trust who you play with, or trust that you're in a venue. Many BDSM groups have venues where it's vetted, safe environment to play with people that you may not have completely built that trust level up with. So it's important to, if you're going to be, I guess, playing independently, to have an incredible level of trust. And if you don't have that level of trust, play in a venue that provides and will work to keep you safe. So those are my thoughts on the rabbit hole of legality and kink. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. And no matter where you're listening, please don't forget to click the follow button so you never miss an episode. And I look forward to chatting with you next week. And I hope you have an awesome, awesome week.